So if you can figure out some way to make money from the US while you're living abroad in a country that has a lower cost of living, that's basically like a life cheat code. So it's like, sometimes you play video games. You start off on like, maybe there's like recruit mode, easy mode, medium mode, hard mode, and there's veteran difficulty. If you want to play the game of life on easy mode, then make money from a country that has a ton of money, and then live in a country that is much more affordable.
Cześć moi drodzy, dzisiaj u nas na kanale gości Shane Hummus. Jest to amerykański youtuber, który tworzy bardzo wartościowe treści dotyczące alternatywnej edukacji, różnych kierunków studiów, kariery, przedsiębiorczości i wielu innych ciekawych rzeczy. Shane, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. As you know, at JDJ IOS, we have students who undergo American high school curriculum, and many of them plan on studying abroad in the US. What would you say are the advantages of studying in the US?
Hey, Wojtek, thank you so much for bringing me on to talk to your students. And I think this is going up on your YouTube channel as well or something. But I love what you're doing with education and teaching people like alternative methods of, getting into the US and getting educated in general. So that's really awesome. So we're both kind of passionate about the same thing, which is education and careers. I'm specifically kind of passionate about alternative education. That's my biggest passion. But to answer your question, students who want to study in the US. Studying in the US can be amazing for the right type of student. It really depends on what your goals are. So you really want to figure out like what is your goal and then kind of work backwards from there. So it's, once you know where you are right now and you know where you want to get to, it's actually quite easy to kind of reverse engineer the steps that you need in order to get to your goal. But just, studying in the US for the sake of studying in the US, could potentially end up being quite expensive. I don't know if you've heard, but colleges in the US are quite expensive. But with that being said, we do have some of the best colleges in the world, and it kind of depends on what you're studying and what your goals are. But that can be really good. Now, some people who have reached out to me, their goals for studying in the US are they actually want to move to the US, and it actually makes it a lot easier to move to the US if you get a college degree there. So, in that case, I would say go for it. If your goal is to move to the US, studying, getting a degree in the US is a great idea. A lot of people I've worked with have done that. Another thing you could do if it's too hard for you to get into a US university or you think it's too expensive, I've seen several people do this. One student I worked with who came from Myanmar, a country that doesn't have a lot of opportunity, they actually immigrated to Canada first because the US wasn't really an option for them. So they went to Canada first, and their plan is to, once they have been in Canada for a little bit, to immigrate to the US from Canada. So that's another very common option if you come from a country where it might be a little harder to get into the US. Tends to be much easier if you go to Canada first and then the US. But yeah, it is a very big question to answer, and it really depends on the person's situation. Can kind of take it on a case-by-case basis. Several of the people I've worked with who have ended up going to the US go to a school called Thomas Edison State University. You're able to get kind of an accelerated degree. You're able to get your degree much faster at Thomas Edison State University, and they do accept international students. So that can be a really good option. But again, that's such a broad question. It really, it depends on the person.
In your opinion, what things should be taught at universities that aren't taught right now or aren't taught enough?
I think, again, that kind of depends on the situation as well. In the US, for instance, we have particular problems with universities that maybe you don't have in Poland. But in the US, one of the biggest problems is it's essentially turned into a business where universities are just giving students what they want and what they're interested in. So if a student is interested in video games, for instance, they could, at a lot of universities, you could literally just create a video game studies degree. That is a thing now, right? So, that's not necessarily something you can make a lot of money from, or even if you can make money from it, like being a pro gamer or designing games, it doesn't teach you any tangible skills that are going to help you do that. It's all philosophical, sort of eclectic type skills that are interesting. It's really interesting stuff. I like to take, intro level classes in there a lot of the time. But in terms of teaching you tangible skills, it's not that good in many cases. Now, this is just a problem for US universities. I have heard that it's a big problem for other countries as well. And then, in the US, the price of college is just astronomically high. So it's like ridiculously high, $80,000 on average, over 80,000, 5.1 years of your life on average to get a bachelor's degree. So that is a massive risk that everybody is taking. They're making this decision very early on in their life when they probably have no idea what they want to do with their life. So there are quite a few problems in terms of what colleges can do to make it better. It depends on, what sort of, how the government is helping colleges out and the structure of the economy of the country and that sort of thing. But I just think generally speaking, how education can get better, not necessarily how colleges can make it better, but how education can get better is just more options for people, giving people more options for trying things out without taking a lot of risk at the beginning. Because, in the US, you're taking a massive amount of risk when you go to college. You're putting yourself in an $80,000 hole, 5 years of your life. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't work out, but you're making a huge decision, probably maybe the biggest decision you'll ever make in your life at 18 years old. So a lot of the time it doesn't work out, unfortunately. There are many other options for learning skills where you can get educated and you can get into a career where you aren't taking nearly as much of a risk. So a lot of the time I will push people towards these options if they're not sure what they want to do. And, digital marketing, tech sales, these types of careers that are in really, really high demand, at least here in the US and oftentimes abroad as well. I just went to a business conference and everybody at the conference, all their pain points were sales and operations manager. Basically, everybody had trouble with their sales team. They couldn't hire enough salesmen. When they did hire the salesman, they would leave for a better job right off the bat. And then everybody else had issues with operations management because that's another really tough skill to learn and skill to hire for. What I found that is really good is certifications. A lot of the time can be great. Boot camps, online boot camps can be a great opportunity as well. Sometimes colleges will host the boot camps as well. So colleges are trying to kind of adapt to that sort of thing. Sometimes online courses can be great to kind of teach you, let you kind of sample different careers, see which ones would be a good choice for you, and which ones complement your strengths, which ones complement your passions, what you're actually passionate about, and these sorts of things. And then I think another big thing that colleges can do, and just education in general, is teaching people skills that are evergreen. And these are the types of skills that would be valuable 1,000 years ago. They're going to be valuable 1,000 years in the future, and they're certainly valuable right now. So these types of skills like sales, marketing, operations, these are the type of skills that have always been valuable. They always will be valuable, and they are certainly extremely valuable right now. And then another type of skill that is very hot right now is anything like tech-related, data analytics, software development, IT, and every other skill that kind of revolves around that, like extremely valuable tech-related skills. So if colleges kind of emphasized also soft skills, I know Wojtek talks about soft skills a lot. These are things that are extremely important that, colleges kind of teach you like the theoretical side of things, but they don't actually give you any, real application a lot of the time with soft skills. Like they do a pretty bad job at that overall. So like apprenticeships would be another good thing, is like actually going and working with companies. And you and I kind of talked about how maybe if governments, instead of investing so much money in college, they invested a little bit more money in apprenticeships, it could potentially be more valuable for the economy as a whole, because of the fact that, people would be getting more practical skills that, people actually need in the workplace. And there is no faster way to learn how to do a career than to be taught by somebody who's doing that career. That's the fastest way that you could possibly learn. You basically have a mentor, and that's like a cheat code for learning a career. Yeah, just off the top of my head, those are some of the big things that colleges and just, the education system in general could do to improve outcomes for people.
If you had a child that's a teenager and is just about to graduate from high school, would you send him to university, or what would you advise him or her to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really depends on their goals. But, it depends on their goals. It depends on their strengths, their skills, etc. But I just think, like, generally speaking, like, let's say I had 10 kids, right? Instead of saying one kid, I had 10 kids because I got really busy, right? What would most of them do, right? What would the majority of them do? And I think I would probably send the majority of them to college. I would I would make sure that they have a good idea of what they're trying to get into, like what career they're going for. I would have them, do some tests. Like we're going to talk about, like careerexplorer.com is a good test. We'll make sure to put all these in the description. Careerexplorer.com is a really good test to kind of like figure out what your personality is and what careers could be best for you, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, that sort of thing. So that's a really cool test you can do. I also have some good videos, like how to choose the best college degree for you. That's a really good video. I'll make sure that gets put in the description. But yeah, so if I had 10 kids, I would think at least maybe 5 to 7 of them, I would probably end up sending them to college at this point. And in terms of the degree they'd get, that would depend on the kid. But most of them would likely get some sort of degree that teaches them kind of like more hard skills in general. Especially in the US, you're going to have to take a lot of those classes anyways, where you're going to learn some of the soft skills and some of the kind of theoretical, eclectic stuff that's like interesting to know, but doesn't necessarily help you at all in the economy. But it probably maybe makes you a better person. So it's good to know. That sort of thing, like you have to take it in the US anyway. So I would kind of tell them to stay away from those sorts of degrees typically, but there are exceptions.
Until recently, when we still didn't have Facebook, Amazon, or Google, we didn't have jobs like YouTube creator or SEO specialist, social media expert, or many other jobs. So what do you think are the jobs that we don't yet know about that will exist in about 10 years from now?
I did a whole video on this. I think it was called Jobs That Will Exist 10 Years in the Future, something like that. I'll make sure to link that down below, where I went into specific examples. It's really hard. Like there's so many that are going to exist. But just to kind of mention a few examples, anything that has to do with genetics is going to be massive. People are going to want to not only get really good healthcare, but they're going to want to get healthcare that is specialized to their genes, right? Because there is a huge difference. I mean, I actually came from a medical background. I'm a pharmacist, and there's just a massive difference in, the medications that work with certain patients depending on their genetics, the diets that work. You might have tried a diet, like some YouTuber recommended you a diet. You tried it, it didn't work for you. You're like, oh, this YouTuber is a scammer. Well, actually, it's probably just because your genetics, most likely, right? That it didn't work for you. So, these are all certain things that are going to be massively optimized in the future. So anything to do with genetics is going to be huge. Another one is just anything to do with the creator economy. So, I mean, everybody knows that this is just absolutely exploding. Mr. Beast has just got an offer for $1 billion to buy his company, and he turned it down. And that's probably the move, right? Because his personal brand is insanely strong. I mean, he might be the most known person in the world, or he's probably like top 100 at least. And he's just some kid who started off with a camera in his basement, you know? And that's the power of the creator economy. And there's an entire infrastructure that's forming around that. Wojtek and I were just talking about how freaking hard it is to hire a good script writer for YouTube videos, right? It's like a very difficult skill to hire for. And, you know, it's one of those things that like a lot of people are like, oh, that's a job? Yeah, that's a job. If you work for a big YouTuber who's making millions of dollars and you can, you know, take like 20 hours a week off their plate by helping them write scripts, they're going to pay you really well if you can do that, especially now, like at this point when like nobody has that skill. If you learn that skill and you learn it well, they're going to pay you extremely well. So yes, absolutely, that's a job. And there's a million other little, you know, sub jobs that are going to pop up in the creator economy. So there's going to be an entire infrastructure, an entire ecosystem that pops up around the creator economy. I kind of like to tell people that instead of focusing on the specific careers, it's probably best to just focus on skills that are going to be valuable. So there's certain skills that are just evergreen. They would be valuable 1,000 years ago. They're going to be valuable 1,000 years in the future. And, you know, these are skills. I did a video. I think it was like the 13 most important skills, or I might have framed it as a job, like the 13 best entry level jobs. I'll make sure to, send that to you. But, you know, just off the top of my head, digital marketing, extremely valuable. And you can even break that down even further. So copywriting. Copywriting is an extremely valuable type of marketing, very valuable skill to know. Another one is going to be the technical side of digital marketing. So pay-per-click, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, knowing that technical side is extremely valuable as well. And then basically SEO, anything involving SEO is very valuable. There's an entire like all kinds of careers you probably never would have even guessed of that existed. And like one of them, for instance, I'm trying to hire right now is a link building outreach specialist. So you probably have no idea what that is unless you've like really been involved in SEO. But a link building outreach specialist is somebody who basically reaches out to large brands who have big websites and tries to get backlinks from them, because that's kind of how Google ranks different websites. And that's how you kind of like rank on the first page of Google. It's one of the main ways. So there are people who are literally just trying to like find and talk to people who are in charge of big websites to try to get backlinks from them. That's an entire skill set in and of itself, but it really all stems from kind of copywriting, interpersonal skills like soft skills, communication, and that sort of thing. So instead of kind of focusing on the career and kind of worrying about like, oh, is this career going to exist or not? I think it's better to just focus on skills that you know are extremely valuable. And chances are you will, you know, if you learn these skills, you'll be able to pivot very easily, no matter what happens in the economy.
On a scale 1 to 10, with 10 being AI will totally destroy humankind and everything that we hold dear, where do you rank?
AI is definitely scary, and it definitely needs to be regulated, in my opinion, because it could legitimately destroy everything. But with that being said, all the fears about AI taking jobs and like, you know, all the money going to the billionaires and stuff like that, I think it's totally overstated, totally overrated. You know, it's possible that happens, but the chances of that happening, like almost every time you look at technology automating jobs in the past, just more jobs pop up, because human beings, we're never satisfied. That's like, it might even be one of the reasons why we're so successful. You know, we're on top of the food chain, is because we're literally never satisfied. Like we conquered fire, we conquered space, we conquered the air, and we still want more and more and more. Just look at the creator economy. These are jobs, like if you told somebody 100 years ago that they're going to be like millions of people employed in the creator economy, they would have been like, what are you talking about, right? And then, you know, okay, like ice trucks, right? That's a classic example. Okay, the refrigeration came, and then ice truck drivers and ice truck people, you know, were out of jobs. But then there's a bunch of people who got employed to create like refrigerators and fix refrigerators and all that sort of thing. Same with banks, right? Everybody thought like, oh, ATMs are coming out. There's not going to be any bankers or bank tellers. Well, no, it's just their job pivoted a little bit more towards being kind of like customer service, customer oriented, and, just keeping the customer happier in general, rather than just doing the day-to-day mundane tasks. So I think it's massively overrated, all the people who are freaking out about automation. Automation is kind of like you hit, like it's like whack-a-mole. You smack one mole and another one pops up. You destroy one job and another job pops up, for the most part. And at the end of the day, it makes things more efficient and it adds value to society as a whole. You can find individual, like tiny examples where people do get screwed over by automation. That's always going to happen. But as a whole, it provides a massive, massive amount of value to society.
I think it really depends on what these corporations do about it, what we do with AI, right? Do you think there's danger that AI will be used to exploit some people in society, or what's your take on that?
I think that there will be individual examples of that happening. Looking at it from a big picture standpoint, if you looked at the Industrial Revolution, at the time that the Industrial Revolution started, the average lifespan was 35 years old. And now the average lifespan in the US is 79. I think it's even higher in Europe. It's like 80, 85 in some countries in Europe. So, maybe you have an opinion on why that happened that's different than mine, but the way I see it, it's because of the free market and it's because of technology. So yes, there's every action in the universe has an equal yet opposite reaction. So there is always going to be a downside to certain things, and in the short term, sometimes it might actually be bad for certain people, but in the long run, we saw that lifespan literally over doubled. It went up like 120% or something like that. So that's like literally double the amount of years that you're able to live. And even more than that, quality years, right? So it's like people had a lot more quality years because their back wasn't breaking by the time they're 30 years old and their teeth weren't rotting out by the time they're 35. As a whole, it is without a doubt, in my opinion, increased the overall quality of life of people. So I think that AI will be the same way. It'll increase the overall quality of life when you look at it from a big picture perspective. I'm sure there will be several examples where businesses try to exploit people and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure that will happen in some countries. Some countries will deal with it better. There's probably a optimal amount of regulation. I always like to think of regulation kind of like salt and pepper. You want to use it in moderation. You want to use an optimal amount to get the job done, and it actually enhances things, right? If you put the right amount of salt and pepper on your egg in the morning, it makes it even better. But if you dump the whole container on your egg, it's probably not going to taste very good, right? So yeah, there's always going to be like an optimal amount. Some countries will do a better job than others on that. Some businesses will, exploit more than others. And but at the end of the day, I think it will be a positive thing.
Do you think jobs of the future will make us more location independent?
Absolutely. So location independence is, first of all, it's like so awesome to just travel around the world. I mean, can I say where we are right
Sure.
now? Yeah, we met in Chiang Mai, Thailand, right? We're both in Chiang Mai right now. So it's just so amazing to travel around the world and experience different cultures, see what different people are like, see what their society's like, their government's like, how their healthcare system is, their education systems, just in general, like how their how good their food is, like even stuff like that. Like the food here is amazing in Chiang Mai. And yeah, it opens up your mind so much when you get to see the rest of the world and you see how different societies are surviving and thriving. And in terms of location independence, in terms of like a financially speaking, it's very smart because what you can do is you can basically get a job from a country where there's a ton of money. Like in the US, we have a massive amount of money. There's just no other way to put it. We're incredibly powerful and we have a ton of money in the US. So if you live in the Philippines, Thailand, something like this, a country with a low cost of living, but you have a job in the US or you make money from the US somehow, maybe you do tutorials on YouTube where you teach people how to use Excel on YouTube or something like that, or you teach people how to use Python because you're really good at it. Or you said there's a lot of IT talent in Poland, I think, right? So you could teach people IT related skills. And like a lot of people are probably watching from the US, and guess what? You're getting paid in US advertiser money when you do that. So if you can figure out some way to make money from the US while you're living abroad in a country that has a lower cost of living, that's basically like a life cheat code. So it's like, sometimes you play video games, you start off on like, maybe there's like recruit mode, easy mode, medium mode, hard mode, and there's veteran difficulty. If you want to play the game of life on easy mode, then make money from a country that has a ton of money, and then live in a country that is much more affordable. And that's just from a financial perspective, from a like personal growth and happiness and like enjoying your life and just expanding your mind perspective. I would say it's even better. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
What are your thoughts about blockchain and how that technology is going to change the nature of work?
So I think that, blockchain and cryptocurrency has a massive amount of potential. I think it's going to, be our future currency. And simply speaking, it is a better representation of value than money currently is. Like money right now it's a better representation of value than anything we've used before, but we've seen like, the problems with money. Governments can just keep printing it. Whenever there's a problem, the money printer goes brr, as they say. So there's a lot of problems with money. Also, it isn't necessarily how much value you give society in some situations. You could be born into money, or you could have been like, you could have just kind of gotten it because you got a little bit lucky. You could get money because you exploited people in certain cases. So it isn't necessarily as directly tied to giving value, which that's the whole purpose of money. It's supposed to be a store of value. So blockchain and cryptocurrency technology eventually is going to improve what money is. Now, most of the projects out there right now are absolute trash, in my opinion. The ones that are more valuable in terms of like they actually have the functions that people originally said cryptocurrency was going to have are ones that you typically don't see making a lot of money, like in terms like going up in price like a stock. And then the ones that are a lot of the time like really useless are the ones that go up in price. So it's just like, I don't know how long this is going to last, but right now I'm, very skeptical of blockchain, but in the long run, I think it is going to be a new form of currency. And then of course it's more than just currency, because it can be like a smart contract and it can do all sorts of things like that. It's going to act almost like a lubricant for society in a way. It's like, it's just going to make value exchange easier to happen in society, in my opinion, eventually.
More efficient.
Yeah, because right now there's a lot of examples of people who give an insane amount of value, but they aren't really compensated fairly for it. And the most obvious example, in my opinion, would be teachers. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's literally nothing more important to a country's future than to have good teachers, people that educate children. And in the US, teachers aren't paid very well. I think you said in Poland, they're not paid very well either. So, that could be a potential future thing that blockchain could be used to kind of solve that issue. It's like, okay, there's certain professions where for some reason they're giving an insane amount of value and they're not being compensated very much for it. There's other professions where they're arguably not giving very much value, maybe like a finance related profession, and they're getting compensated like billions of dollars for it, right? So, that is definitely a problem. And again, I'm not like super complaining about it. It's still better than it has been in the past, but I do think it can be a lot better in the future.
Shane, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you being guest on our channel. And to all our viewers in Central and Eastern Europe, at the JDJ IOS, we are going to introduce an oral English course that you can all join, where you can practice your English, but most importantly, you can actually learn about future skills and 21st century competencies that we were just talking about. So it's a great chance to practice your English, but also to learn about those essential skills for your future. So check out Shane's videos. There's a lot of very valuable content. And what else? Any final message to young teenagers who are unsure what to do with their life?
Definitely check out my video, How to Choose the Perfect College Degree for You. And then I think I made another video called How to Choose the Perfect Career for You. And then I think I'm probably going to make a more detailed video. I also have a 6-step guide to choosing your dream career. I put that in the link of a lot of my videos as well. But, definitely watch those because I go more in depth in those. But like, typically speaking, you are young right now and you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know what you like, probably. You don't know what you don't like. You don't know what your strengths are. You don't know what your weaknesses are. So you really want to kind of work on finding those things out. And so if you were trying to figure out like, what's my favorite food? Well, if you've only tried 5 foods, if you've only tried like hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza, and, I don't know, a few spaghetti and like, 5 foods, chances are like the one that's your favorite out of those 5 is probably not your real favorite food because you've only tried 5. So maybe you should try to, try a bunch of other foods out, try 100, try 200 different ones. And the best way that you can do that is, look at these different jobs, look at the job descriptions, see what skills those job descriptions require. And then go on YouTube, look up those skills and just start watching the course. See like, is this something I like? Maybe you think software development is really cool. It is kind of cool. Like one person can create a website that 1 million people can use, which is like, that's never been able to happen before in history. One person can literally program a piece of software that 1 million people can use or create a website. So that's kind of cool. But for some of you, you might not really care and you think the coding, is kind of boring. So, and that's fine as well. Maybe you think marketing is interesting because you like the artistic aspect of marketing. But yeah, these are things you definitely want to kind of look into and just explore as much as you can. You can also reach out to people on LinkedIn. And a lot of the time they're happy to answer your questions if you reach out to enough people. I had a friend, you might think like nobody's going to help you, but I had a friend who I actually just interviewed him about a week ago or so. And he was trying to get into very prestigious management consulting jobs. And he reached out to about 30 people who were at these management consulting companies, and a bunch of them got back to him. These are very busy people who are at a very prestigious job at a very prestigious company, and they still got back to him, and he was able to land the job in a very short period of time. So you'd be surprised how many people will get back to you if you reach out to them. It's just a numbers game. If you reach out to one person, they're probably not going to get back to you. But if you reach out to 10 or 20 people, you're going to get a few of them that get back to you, which is great. So you want to sample things as much as possible because you want to figure out what you actually like, right? You're not going to really know what you like until you've actually tried as many things as possible. And that's something that I kind of talk about in my 6-step guide to choosing your dream career. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. Now,
so much useful and valuable information. Shane, thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Take care.